dedicated graciously by Sarah Malka Simon, commemorating the yahrzeit of her dear husband, Rabbi Yitzchak Yaakov ben Reb Moshe, also known as Jerry Simon, the famous legendary Brooklyn caterer. On the occasion of his yahrzeit, today on the 4th day of Adar, Tahei Nishmasei Tzrura, B'tzror HaChayim, and may his soul continue to be a source of inspiration and love for his family and the community and the entire Jewish people, and for all of the family, L'arichas Yamim V'Shanim Tovos, B'toich Menuchas HaNefesh, also dedicated for a complete and speedy recovery to Shlomo Yosef ben Risha and to Shmuel Bracha ben Tirza for Refuah Kroiva and Refuah Shlema, L'arichas Yamim V'Shanim Tovos, and for all of our hostages, of course, and for all of the soldiers and all of their families and all of our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land. Next week, Be'ezer Hashem, there's also going to be a class. Next Tuesday, it will also be a Purim class. So, today, we're actually going to focus, sometimes you can focus on an entire story, sometimes you could focus on a sentence, a chapter or a sentence, a paragraph or a sentence. Sometimes on part of a sentence, and sometimes on a word, just one word. But today we're not even going to do that. Today we're going to focus on the order of two words, and the order keeps on changing, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It would seem that in terms of theme and message, it's identical. But when one sees this ever in Chumash or in Tanakh, it always ought to trigger curiosity. What happened? Why did you just change the order of things? Now, these are things that people read every single year. They've learned it, they read it. But these are things that are so easy to miss and gloss over because it doesn't seem like it makes a big difference. But today, Be'ezer Hashem will learn how these are seemingly not so relevant or thematic change really sheds light on an entire layer of the story that one can easily miss. So we're going to be looking into the first chapter of Megillas Esther today, which of course this is the month to learn Megillas Esther. And on Purim there's a mitzvah to read the Megillah and hear the Megillah twice at night and by day. It's one of the 4 unique mitzvahs of Purim, together with Shalach Manos and charity for the poor, and the feast, the meal of Purim, is Mikra Megillah, hearing the whole story of the Megillah. And the halacha is that we read the entire Megillah, all the 10 chapters. The first chapter just seems like complete historical context and introduction, which doesn't really seem to be part of the story. And in fact, there were sages who believed that you don't have to read it even on Purim, because it's an interesting introduction, but it's not really the story. And yet the halacha is Kairei Eskula, that we read the entire Megillah, including chapter 1. And if we miss out chapter 1, if we want to start later in the story, it's actually not fulfilling the mitzvah. How does chapter 1 of the Megillah begin? So you have it in your source sheet. And by the way, we post all the source sheets on theyeshiva.net together with the class, so you can retrieve it later, or those who are watching online or listening. So the opening of Esther is, everybody knows, Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh. It's good you're not fasting, so you could listen with calmness. I hope you're not fasting. Hu Achashverosh hamelech ma'duvat kol sheva v'asrim medina. It was in the days of Achashverosh. Who's Achashverosh? He is the Achashverosh who reigned from a country called Haidu till a country called Kush, some translated as India, till Ethiopia. Over 127 states or provinces. Bayamim ha'heim, those days, as he sat on his throne, which was situated in the capital of the Persian Empire called Shushan, a city that's still identifiable. And in fact, in the 1890s, a French researcher did excavations and discovered the palaces of the Persian Empire during this time under the ground, and an expert then wrote, whoever wrote the Megillah knew exactly what they were talking about, because it's a perfectly choreographed and designed consistent exactly what was revealed in the excavations, parenthetically. So the 3rd year of his reign, he makes a huge feast. For whom? for all of his ministers, all of his servants, and all of the ministers that are in charge of the 127 provinces. He brings them all together to the capital to celebrate for 180 days, which is, of course, a half a year. And when he finishes with that party, he hasn't had enough. So now begins a 7-day party for everybody who lives in Shushan. All of his subjects, all of the people who live in Shushan are now invited to a feast in the palace of the king. And the Megillah goes on to describe exactly what the feast looked like, what was served, what type of goblets were used, the decorations, the designs, even the fabrics. The fabric that was used to design the palace are somehow important to appreciate the story. Then we come to verse 9, Pasuk Tes, the second paragraph in your source sheet. And suddenly the story shifts to the queen of the Persian Empire, who of course, her name is Vashti. From verse 9 till the end of chapter 1 is completely dedicated to the Vashti saga. What happens? So let's see. Gam Vashti Amalka, or in the musical cantillation, we saw Gam Vashti Amalka, also, interesting way of starting a sentence. Also, Vashti the queen makes a feast for the women, where Beis HaMalchus in the royal palace that belongs to the king Achashverosh, and of course by Yom HaShvi Ketev Lev HaMelech Bayoyin. It's the 7th day of the party, the last day. And the heart of the king is merry with wine. He has had a lot to drink, and he's feeling merry and joyous and happy, and you could say drunk and inebriated. And he asks his servants, 7 people, Muhuman, Bizisa, Charvoina, Biksa, Avaksa, Zesa, Charkas, Shivas HaSarisim. 7 Sarisim. You know what the word Sarisim means? Sarisim means servants, but you know what it really means? A saris is somebody whose fertility was eliminated, castrated. Why are they called sarisim? The ancient kings would do this to all the people that they hired to work with their women, with their queens. This is what they would do to them. That's why they're called sarisim. This is what they would do to all the men who were working with their wives, queens, and women in the palace. Yes, they would castrate them. That's why they were called sarisim. And he sends them. Bring Vashti the queen to the king in her crown. Why? Why? To show all the nations and all the ministers, meaning the people from all the different nations and ministers, her beauty. As the Megillah says, Vashti indeed was gorgeous. We know what happens next. She refuses to come and follow the word of the king that he sent through these 7 servants. And what happens? He's burning from anger. Vayiktzef means he becomes wrathful. He's angry. His wrath, his anger, bara is burning inside of him. It's not just a public anger that he displays. Even deeper is the anger inside. And what happens in Pasuk Yud Gimel? He speaks to all of his servants. He speaks to the servants, to the 7 people that he consults. And he asks them, Tasvav, Kedas Ma'alasas B'Malka Vashti. What should be done with this queen Vashti, who disobeyed the instruction of the king Achashverosh? And Memuchan, one of the 7, stands up and says, oh, this wasn't a crime only against you by Vashti the queen. No. This was a crime against the Persian Empire. This is going to create disarray and chaos everywhere. Why? Suddenly women were going to start revolting against their husbands. Great topic for a woman's class, no? The women will finally take Vashti as a living example and say, this is how you treat your husband. He says, come, and you say, absolutely not. And Memuchan says, we're done. You could send the males to Antarctica. We're done. We have nothing left. They're all going to learn how to denigrate, embarrass, lahavzois, humiliate their husbands, because even the queen, who was told by the king to come, doesn't listen. Who should? Who should feel any sense of duty and loyalty to their spouse? And this will be an embarrassment forever. And therefore I say that the king must give a decree. Take a look in Pasuk Yud Ches. Asher loy savoi Vashti lifnei hamelech Achashverosh. Vashti should not appear anymore before the king, and let her malchus, let her royalty be given to somebody better. And everybody will hear the news, and the women will learn to honor their husbands. Whether they're big or small, honor their husbands. The king and the ministers appreciate these words, and they follow through, and they send out books and letters to all the provinces in all different languages. And what's the message? Every man has the right to rule in his own home. Okay. That's the end of the story. That's how chapter 1 finishes. Chapter 2 is the king sobers up, and he's like, that was not such a good idea. That was not such a good idea. He's now longing for Vashti. He remembers her. And that's when his ministers come and say it's time to search for a new queen. And the search begins. And ultimately, we know the continuation of the story. Esther is taken and becomes the new queen of Achashverosh. But this is the end of the first chapter of the Megillah. And by the way, the Gemara says in Tractate Megillah, Rava says that these letters that the king sent out after Vashti was removed and eliminated actually saved the day. Because when people got these letters, they're like, what type of crazy king do we have? He's a meshugana. He's a nut job. So later, years later, when they got the letters that everybody should kill every single Jew, they said, the Meshugana came out with a second set of letters. So it was the first letter that actually saved the day, that nobody took him that seriously when they got the second letters, the decree of Haman to eliminate all the Jewish people. Okay, that's parenthetically. Now, I'm going to get very, very technical now and very granular. But to make it a little easier, I underlined my issues. Is that a good line in English? I underline my issues? Okay. Underlined my issues. It's good for all of us to sometimes underline our issues with the right people. Take a look. Pasuk Tes, okay? Take a look. Second paragraph in your source sheet. Gam Vashti Hamalka. Vashti comes before Malka, right? Vashti, the queen, makes a party for the women. Okay. The king, on the seventh day, he's drunk and he tells his 7 ministers who are working with the women in the palace, who are working with his queen, they are servants of his queen. Yud Aleph, Lahavi es Vashti Hamalka. Bring Vashti the queen. Okay, nice. Now take a look at the next pasuk. Vatema'en. What does it say? What would you expect? What should have been said written? Vatema'en. Vashti Hamalka. He changes. Vatema'en Hamalka Vashti. The queen Vashti refused. Why the change? You say, what's the difference? What's the difference? Vashti the queen Vashti. I get it, but why the first 2 times does it say Vashti Hamalka and suddenly it's Hamalka Vashti? Okay? Now you look in Pasuk Tesvav. After she refuses, he consults his 7 advisors. Kedas Malasois. You see? It's emphasized, you see? What is it now? Bamalka Vashti. With the queen Vashti. Now Memuchan responds the next time, and he says it wasn't only against the king. Ifsa Vashti Amalka. Back to Vashti the queen. And again he says, everybody is going to learn a lesson when the king said, Lahavi is Vashti Amalka, again Vashti Amalka. And then finally when he wants to give out the edict that Vashti should be eliminated, what's the word? Ashaloi Savai Vashti. Vashti, just Vashti. So first it's Vashti Amalka, then it's Vashti Amalka, then it's Hamalka Vashti, then it's Bamalka Vashti. It's back to Vashti Amalka, and then just Vashti. What is going on? First of all, once you called her the queen the first time, we know who she is. You don't have to say queen every single time. He repeats queen every single time, besides the last. If you don't need it the last time, you don't need it the other times. We already know who Vashti is. Even if you want to say it, maybe to honor her for whatever reason, that's how you call a queen. You just don't so say the name. But why is he changing? First Vashti the queen, then Vashti the queen, then the queen Vashti, then the queen Vashti, then Vashti the queen, then Vashti the queen. So it's a few times this way, a few times that way, and then Vashti without any name. Whenever you see such a thing in Tanakh, it's not a mistake. This wasn't just, let's just change it around to make it exciting. People are hungry, they're thirsty, they want to get home already, they have shalach manas to pack. The costume is really, really warm and hot, so let's just get it over with, so we'll change it up a little bit. But rather, there's profound significance here. Now, the truth is that in Hebrew, what would be more appropriate? Vashti HaMalka or Malka Vashti? If you're familiar with Hebrew grammar, unlike English. In English, what do we say first? Queen, right? Queen Elizabeth. Yes? Queen Esther. Lahavdil, I should say. Right? We say King David, King Saul. But in Hebrew, we don't do that. In Hebrew, you say David HaMelech. First the name, then king. Shaul HaMelech. And the truth is, it's in everything that way. In English, if you want to say a large table, you say a large table. How do you say that in Hebrew? Shulchan Gadol, which actually makes sense. First you describe the noun, and then you give us the adjective if it's large. The same as, right? So in Hebrew it makes more sense. Shulchan, and it's a Shulchan Gadol. In English, we don't do that. We don't do table large, a large table, right? Even if you want to say somebody is very smart, right? How do you say that in Hebrew? Chacham ma'od. You see? Smart very. Chacham gadol. We don't say gadol chacham, which actually makes sense. First tell me that he's smart, and then describe to me the depth of his wisdom or the magnitude of his wisdom. And the same is true in everything, right? If you want to say good morning, how do you say it in English? Good morning. What do you do in Hebrew? Boker tov. No, you should say tov boker. Nobody does that, right? And actually makes more sense, because first you're describing the reality itself, and then you get into the details, the various adjectives. So Vashti HaMalka in Hebrew actually makes a lot of sense. Vashti, the queen. So that's why that makes sense. But suddenly he changes it. He goes to Malka Vashti, which is similar to the English language, and some others that use first the adjective of the queen and then the name. So that just intensifies the fact that the grammar was changed there, inconsistent with the laws of Lashon Kodesh, with diktik of Lashon Kodesh, that it's certainly telling us something. You probably know that when we read the Megillah, you know, there's a musical rhythm in which the Megillah is read. How does the person reading the Megillah know this? The Megillah doesn't have any vowels or what's called cantillations, or in Yiddish it's called trup or tamei hamikra. But this is memorized. When the Tanakh, just like the Chumash itself, was given, they were also given a music how to read it. That was not written inside the Sefer Torah. It's printed today in the Chumash. This was part of the tradition of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And that's why the Baal Koreh has to memorize. People don't realize. He's not just reading the words inside. He has to memorize the musical note for every single word. And it's different for every word. And these are called the Trup, the Tamei HaMikra. In Chumash, it's one type of music. In Navi and Ksuvim, it's a different type of music. Megillah has its type of music. Tehillim has its type of music. Much of it is not known today because a lot of it was forgotten. Chumash we still have. Megillah we still have. We have it in Eicha, Tisha B'Av, when Eicha is read. So every word has a different musical cantillation. That's not coincidental. It's not like just let's, do the music. It's connected to the word. In fact, they say in the name of the Vilna Gaon that he once said that even if he didn't have the text of Chumash, and he just heard the music of the words, he would be able to reconstruct the text based on the music, which is pretty intense, because it's like da 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 da. Okay, now you go figure out the words. But the truth is, when your husband comes home, you could probably hear from the sing-song of his words, what he's feeling, what he's not feeling, where he is, etc. And when you tell it to him, he may not like it, but if you know how to listen to music, you can hear the words behind the music. Each time it says here, Vashti HaMalka, there's a different musical cantillation. The first time it's Gam Vashti HaMalka Asasab Mishtei Nashim. That's called Vashti HaMalka. If you'll see the signs, I put in here the signs. It's called Zakef Katan. In the time of it's called Zakef Katan. Okay. Next, Pasuk Yud Aleph. Es Vashti HaMalka. It's called Darga Severe. Vashti is called Darga in the names of the cantillations, of the musical notes. And HaMalka is, if you see the sign under the word, it's called severe. Okay? Then you have the next one, if you see Pasuk Tesvav, Kedos Malasois Bamalka Vashti, Bamalka Vashti. Oh, sorry, you had base. Right, you had base. Vatemain Hamalka Vashti. That's called Munach Revi. Okay? Then Pasuk Tesvav is called Bamalka Vashti. Kedos Malasois Bamalka Vashti. Bamalka Vashti. And that is called Tipcha Es Nachta. Tipcha Es Nachta. Okay? And then you have the next one. You see the next one? Lo yala melech levadoi, lo yala melech levadoi afsa Vashti hamalka. This is called Munach es Nachta. The next one is Vashti hamalka. We already had it. It's Darga Severe Vashti hamalka. And then you have Asher lo Savoi Vashti. That's called Rivi'i. So it's fascinating. Now here we're going to learn that the exact order of her name and the music that is used is actually telling a story behind the story. So there's a plot, there's a subplot, and there's a subplot. The way Torah was written is, there's the story that you can hear with the words, but there's another story that you're going to hear through the music. And there's another story that you're going to hear through the way it's written, for example, the change of order. Why do you have all these ways? Because that's the most profound way of giving over a story with many different layers without it filling up 100,000 books. So one sentence can be given over with one sentence, but that one sentence has layers and layers and layers and layers. And it's all communicated through different methods. One is through the actual meaning, one is through the music, one is through the order of the words. Like what we spoke in Parshas Mishpatim, if you remember, about the word Yazid, right? Nizid Adashim. That wasn't something that was explicit in the pasuk. You had to say, oh, Asher la Yazid means he didn't do it willingly. And that's found by Yaakov cooking up the lentils. But it's giving you another layer of meaning. And here too, that's what we experience here. What would be the layer of meaning here? What's missing? Why do you need all of this? There's an obvious question. Why did Vashti not want to come? The Megillah doesn't say why she didn't want to come. It just says she refused. So one can speculate different things. What happened here? Okay. Another very interesting thing is, Vashti is introduced as a queen every single time. When Achashverosh is introduced the first time, he's not introduced as a king. Isn't that interesting? The opening of the Megillah is, Vayihi bimei Achashverosh. One second, wait. Vayihi bimei HaMelech Achashverosh. No, he's not a king. Vayihi bimei Achashverosh. Hu Achashverosh HaMelech. Oh, he is a king. No, we're just telling you that he reigned, but he's not called a king. Where is he called a king the first time? Pasuk Beis. Bayamim ha'em kesheves HaMelech Achashverosh. Oh, suddenly he became a king. After 3 years, he became a king. The first time you don't introduce him as a king. Vashti right away. Gam Vashti Amalka. You don't say Vashti became a queen. She's right away introduced as a queen. What does that tell us? Now these are things you can easily gloss over. What's the difference? Melech HaChashverosh, not Melech HaChashverosh. No. This omission is the core of the story. This is the issue of the story. There is a silent war between Achashverosh and Vashti. Their relationship is not only far from ideal, to put it mildly, but there's actually something that sits in the heart of Achashverosh that is very, very complex. And at this point, after all this honor and all the feasting, and he's had 187 days of the nation in awe of him, there's one nut that he did not crack yet. Right? The frustration of many a man in this world. He may have 3,000 employees, and they're all bowing down, right? And when he comes home, it's like, you forgot the wine. You are so disorganized, and you're late, and I've been waiting for you, and the garbage needs to be taken out. It's called an identity crisis. 1 second, his mother thinks he's God's gift to humanity, which only intensifies it. You see where this class is going, don't you? Yes, yes, yes. So this is something that's interesting. You know, Achashverosh is a king, 187 days, and you see how much glory and how much royalty and how much wealth and how much affluence this man has. But there's one thing that he did not deal with, and that sits at him, and that's the last thing at the end, 187 days drunk. You know, but they, you know, the drunkenness brings out everything, and finally, boom. So he brings Vashti. He wants to bring Vashti Amalka. She has her whole party, and he tells these 7 people, go bring Vashti. And the Megillah says why? She's beautiful, and he wants to display his beauty. He wants to show everybody, as he says, her beauty. She refuses to come. Vatamoyin Amalka. But why does she refuse? The Megillah does not say clearly. It just says that the king goes crazy from anger. Why? Vayiktzov hamelech ma'oid. Vayiktzov hamelech means he's angry. It's not just he's angry. Ma'oid. He's seething. The anger is simmering. And if that's not a chamasei bara, there's like a fire inside of him, more than anybody imagines. He was just triggered in unimaginable ways. Something really, really happened. This guy has lost it. What happened? Let's say she doesn't want to come. Whatever. Maybe she's tired, maybe she's exhausted. Fine, you're upset. But what is this level of anger? And the Megillah doesn't say it to us. The Midrashim talk about this because there's a gap. Like what happened here? There's a gap. But it turns out that the Megillah does tell it to us. It just doesn't say it with words. It tells it to us with the change of words. It tells it to us with the music. So let's understand what's happening. When we look at Rashi, take a look at Rashi, okay? Rashi always wants to explain the basic meaning. So Rashi says, Vatamoyin Amalka Vashti. Next source. Rabbi Seinu Amru, our teachers taught, and this is from Tractate Megillah Daf Yud Beis, page 12. Lefi shaparcha batzaras. Basically, Vashti grew a leprosy. She grew a leprosy, and therefore, she did not want to show up because, as Rashi is intimating, Achashverosh didn't just want her to show up completely covered. Achashverosh wanted her to show up without clothes. And she was horribly humiliated. She would have been humiliated because of this leprosy. And that's why she refuses. It's interesting. And Rashi says, she was quite a cruel woman, and she would strip Jewish girls from their clothes and have them work on Shabbos. And therefore, this is what happens to her. Her husband wants her to remove her clothes, and this is all on Shabbos because it's the 7th day. And the 7th day means not only the 7th day of the party, but the 7th day of the week because the party began on Sunday and ends on Shabbos. Okay, but now is another question. So Vashti should have sent him a message and said, Achashverosh, you really don't want me to show up this way because this is going to be not geschmack, not only for me, but also for you. I have a tsaras, I have whatever you want to call it, a leprosy, a skin deformity, and it's not going to be geschmack. Why is he so angry? So Rashi says, Vayiktzov shesholcha lo divrei gnai. She didn't only say no. She really went into him. She sent him words that shamed him. Rashi doesn't say what. So we go to the source of Rashi, Maseches Megillah. Megillah Daf Yud Beis, the next source. Vayiktzov hamelech ma'od. Amai dolka be'kulahai. You have it also in English. Why was his anger burning? Dolka is from the word dleka. Why was his anger like a fire? Why was he so angry? Even if she's not coming, explain yourself. Especially if she has a very good reason. It's actually going to save him from disgrace. You know, he's trying to show off the queen, and it's not going to work. So why is he so angry? Amar Rava says we have a tradition. Sholchalei. She sent him a message. Bar Ahur Yorei da Abba. Ahur Yorei is the Aramaic word for a guy who runs a stable of horses. She says, you are basically a stable man. You belong with horses. My father, Vashti had a father whose name was Belshazzar. He was one of the monarchs of the Babylonian Empire. Vashti was a great-granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had a son. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first Beis HaMikdash. He was the king of Babylonia, present-day Iraq. The Babylonian Empire was mighty and ferocious. He came and destroyed the first Beis HaMikdash, exiled the Jewish people from Judea. That's why they were in Persia. And Nebuchadnezzar had a son, Evil Miroidach. Then there was Belshazzar. Vashti was a son of Belshazzar. Achashverosh worked as a stableman who took care of the horses in the stable of her father. So she calls him Bar Ahuriyare da Abba. You're basically my father's stableman. That's who you are. Let's remember. That was the message back. But that's not enough. First of all, she tells him his yichus. But now she says, let me tell you something else about you. You know the difference between my father and you. Abba, my father, Lakovel Alpa, in front of 1,000 people, Chamra Shasi, he could drink wine, Veloy Rave, and he did not go crazy. He didn't become inebriated. Hahu Gavra, this man, referring to her husband, she doesn't want to say you. This drunkard, Ishtate Bechamra, you become a shaita when you drink wine. We spoke last week about a shaita, shtus, right? Atzei shittim, 2 types of insanity. You become insane when you're drunk. That's the difference. My father knew how to hold his liquor. He knew how to hold his vodka. He knew how to hold his scotch. 1,000 people were there. He drank, and he was a man. And you're a shaita. You're not a man. You belong in a horse stable. Get drunk with the horses. Miyad v'chamasei barabai. When he heard this, he really lost it. Now he really lost it. Interesting. But now the question is, where did the Chazal see this in the story? It just says she refused. Yeah, they were bothered by something. Why did he get angry? But none of this says in the Megillah. It's interesting. The Megillah doesn't tell us why she refused. The Megillah doesn't say that she insulted him. It apparently deletes all of these details which are essential to the story. And why now does Vashti decide to talk to him about the fact that he ran the horse stable of her father? I mean, he just asked her to come. Obviously, she was hearing something. Why now? I mean, you want to have a conversation with your husband. You can go to a therapist. I don't know if they had therapists in Iran. I don't know if what they do today in Iran when you want to confront the president. But why did she feel right here the need to tell him what a drunkard nutjob he is? There was something sitting in her as well. What is that? And then there's another question which has been raised over the years. Why is this entire story relevant to Megillah Esther? It's certainly an interesting story. It certainly gives us the historical background, why the king was looking for a new queen, why Esther came in. But if you really want to give us the whole historical backdrop, you should go back. Tell us why Achashverosh became a king. How did he become a king? The answer is, you're not telling us the whole story. You're not telling us where he was born and how he was raised and how he ended up becoming a king. You're zooming in on the Purim story. You could say he had a queen Vashti, he got rid of her, he needed a new queen. The whole first chapter of the Megillah seems superfluous in the context of the bigger story here, which is the story of Purim. The Jewish people were saved from Haman's decree. It's certainly a very interesting story, but it seems like to be in the genre of history rather than in the genre of Tanakh, which is telling you a unique story of providence and the Jewish people. And it's an entire chapter, all the way till the end of Perek Aleph. It's not even one or two verses. Another very interesting thing is, the Megillah refuses to say that Achashverosh killed Vashti. Although everybody says the story that way, that doesn't say anywhere in the Megillah. It doesn't say he killed Vashti. It doesn't even say that Memuchan said to kill Vashti. If you take a look at the words that are used, and you'll take a look in Pasuk Yutes, there should be a rule, Asher loy savai Vashti lifnei HaMelech Achashverosh. She should not come before the king. That's the rule. That's the edict. She should not come, and her position should be given to somebody else. So the usual interpretation is, she's not coming. What they do with her, they killed her. But it's so interesting, the Megillah is not afraid of the word killing. Later we're going to have Bixen and Seresh being killed, executed, hung. Haman is going to be hung. The 10 sons of Haman are going to be hung. The 75 Amalekites, the 75,000 anti-Semites who tried to kill Jews are going to be killed. It's all very explicit in the Megillah. 500 people in Shushan. But with Vashti, he stays away from using that word. She shouldn't come. And we have to intimate she was eliminated. Obviously, she was eliminated because if she wasn't executed, Achashverosh could have just brought her back when he was upset. But it's interesting that the Megillah does not say any of this. Because Vashti, so here we have the following interpretation that I'm going to share with you. There's a commentary of the Maharal, a commentary by the Maharal of Prague on Megillah. It's called Or Chodosh, a new light, written by the Maharal. And the first chapter of the Megillah, he develops this point. Also Rabbi Moshe Alshich. These are all 16th century sages. Rabbi Moshe Maharal was, of course, Prague. Rabbi Moshe Alshich was in Tzfas. He wrote a commentary on the Megillah called Masas Moshe. His name was Moshe. And he's buried near the Arizal. If you go to the old cemetery in Tzfas, you have those blue graves. He's one of them. Rabbi Moshe Alshich wrote an amazing commentary on Tanakh, on Megillah also. He develops this. And finally, the Vilna Gaon, in his commentary on Megillah, develops this as well and brings it to the musical dimension as well. Achashverosh is not introduced as a king because indeed the dynasty of kingship did not belong to him. Vashti was a great-granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. She grew up in a house of royalty, aristocracy. Achashverosh becomes the king because he marries Vashti. That's what gives him the push, the breitkeit, and the ability to ultimately be able to do whatever he did in order to acquire this unique position. Because of that, in the 1970s, there were two psychologists who named a very famous phrase called imposter syndrome. You know what imposter syndrome is? Imposter syndrome is more common than most people imagine. It's people who reach great levels of success, but deep down feel undeserving of it. They can't tell that to anybody because they're enjoying their success. They don't even tell it to themselves. But they know that after every successful event, there's something inside of them that's eating up on them. There's a void. There's a torturous void. They usually numb it. Everyone has their own ways of numbing it. One great way of numbing it is looking for more compliments, more validation, which only intensifies the void. What is this void? The void is that they feel that it doesn't really belong to them, the success. And if people would know who they really are, they would laugh them off and throw them off stage. This is more frequent than people imagine. A lot of very wealthy people suffer from this, but they can't tell anybody because they're chashav. A lot of actors, celebrities, artists, musicians, orators, rabbis, clergymen, leaders, speakers, and very talented people in different fields of success, in whatever area is, they often experience this and they don't even know about it because it's not something that's easy to have a conscious conversation with yourself about it. But it sits deep in them. And they really, really feel, I'm stealing, I'm constantly stealing. And they have to constantly silence that in very, very creative and usually dysfunctional ways. The origin of the imposter, anybody suffers from this? You don't have to raise your hand. But if, whenever you finish a successful experience, you're feeling something, a void instead of gratitude and appreciation, this may be something to look into. Achashverosh is the poster boy for this. Deep, deep down, he's insecure about his position for two reasons. First of all, he's an insecure man, he's paranoid, which is why he drinks a lot. Second of all, he knows that he got this all because of Vashti. So both his disposition nature and the fact that he has this ambivalence because of his insecurity, the Megillah begins the story not calling him the king. It's Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. That's why it says in the second pasuk, Vayamim ahem kesheves hamelech Achashverosh. When he sat on the throne, it wasn't after 3 years. So the Gemara says in Maseches Megillah, it was only after 3 years that he felt somewhat settled, and that's when he gets the title king. Vashti is the opposite. She feels it's all her. She owns it. She's very comfortable with it. It comes from her father, her grandfather, her great-grandfather. She was made to rule. She was born with richness, born into it. This is mine. It's my inheritance. You're the imposter. I'm the person. As long as Achashverosh, as long as you remember this, you're good. But you don't forget why you're here, Achashverosh. So of course, Achashverosh is throwing a party. Vashti is like, what, I'm chopped liver? What am I? I'm just your mashaz, I'm just here to bring the cholent to the table? I'm just here to make the Yerushalmi kugel and bring it to you, or the Persian kugel and bring it to you? To make the Iranian chaluptzas? That's not me. Of course she makes a party. On the seventh day, Achashverosh wants to show off Vashti. She's so beautiful. Vashti, whoa. You're crossing borders, Achashverosh here. You want to get drunk with your drunk men, gesund hate. But I'm not part of your party. So the Torah says, Gam Vashti Amalka. She's Vashti the queen. And he says, Lahavi es Vashti Amalka. Bring Vashti the queen. When she refuses, Vatamayin Hamalka Vashti. Suddenly the order changes. This order is actually capturing Vashti's feelings and her response to Achashverosh. Why? Because really, Vashti is the reason that he becomes a king. She is the cover. She is the justification for Achashverosh to fill the shoes, ultimately, of a Nebuchadnezzar, because she is the fourth generation of Nebuchadnezzar. When Achashverosh summons her, he calls her Vashti Hamalka. She's Vashti. She's a regular woman, Vashti. Because she's in my palace, she's the queen. When she refuses, Vatemain Hamalka Vashti. No. I'm a queen before everything. I'm a queen before you were born. I have royal blood. I have aristocratic blood. The name Vashti, which was the name apparently that Achashverosh gave to her, this happens after I was a queen. I didn't become a queen. Vashti in Persian means beautiful. So Achashverosh gives her this name Vashti. He says, then you became a queen. No. I was a queen before you ever gave me my name Vashti. Vatemoyin hamalka Vashti lavi b'dvar hamelech. And you're sending messengers? Asher biyadas, you're sending messengers to call me? So the very change of the order already demonstrates that Vashti was basically telling Achashverosh who she is. When Rava says she told him you're a horse stableman, he wasn't just imposing new words. He saw it in the Megillah. He's like, remember where you come from. I taught you everything you know about royalty. You're a peasant. You're maybe good, you're a cowboy. Go with your horses. Gesund hate. But you're essentially a peasant. And remember, in that generation, class was absolute. This is before Abraham Lincoln's civil rights. When you have a boy hanging out in the stable of horses, and you have a girl who's lonely, you never read any literature? I have to share this with you. I mean, you come from a generation when they used to read these stuff in school, right? Looks like it. You look young, but still, I can imagine you come from a generation when they still read these stories. I know today these things never happen. So that's how it happens. But Vashti is like Atkan. Like, okay, I get this, you know? But you have to know your boundaries. Now, Achashverosh is he's burning up in anger inside. It could have said, Vayiktsef HaMelech, what's v'chamasei bar a boy? The Vilna Gaon says the anger was deeper than what he could have communicated. And I would add, it's deeper than what he could communicate to himself. It's bar a boy. It touched his subconscious insecurity. Sometimes you get triggered in life and you don't know what just happened. Your husband said something or did something. Your child said something or did something or didn't do something. Your friend, your mother, your sister-in-law, your brother-in-law, your sibling, your neighbor, your partner, whatever it is. And you're not just upset. Okay, you're upset. Something happened inside. You're not just angry. V'chamasei bar a boy. Now it's time to become curious. It's not so easy to become curious because sometimes our entire life we were avoiding looking at this dark wound that was just triggered. But if it's triggered, pause, breathe, zoom in and like, wow. And before you respond by screaming, hollering, and killing people like Achashverosh did, although you want to, this is an opportunity for tremendous awareness. This was, if I was Achashverosh's therapist, but he didn't hire me, I'm not sure why. But if I was his therapist, I would say, this is a great moment. It's a great moment. Let's go into another room. Okay, you're on a trip now. I get it. But this is your moment. Let's rebirth you. You're dealing with a lot of shame, Achashverosh. I get it. Right. That's why he didn't invite me. I'm just joking. Right? The Megillah wants us to understand this. When you read the Gemara, Rava said, she told him, you just belong in horses. Like, where did he get this from? The Chazal, I told you many times, Medrash is like the harmony to a song. You know, you could sing a song da 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 with your piano da 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 da, and then you could do da 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 la 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 la. It's the harmony. The harmony doesn't substitute the notes that constitute the ballad itself, but they give it the music, the resonance. It's the resonance of it. When the Gemara, the Medrash, discusses the Psukim, they're not adding stories like we spoke, you remember, about Batya extending her arm, and suddenly the arm gets long. I would run away. If my arm extended 100 feet, I would call Hatzalah and Misaskim and 911 and Chaverim, of course, and run for my life. I would not deal with baskets if my hand just came 100 feet. Sorry. And Batya was not Eliyahu Navi. She was a human being, a princess. Like, what are you doing? Obviously, Chazal are telling you the music of the story. Her goal was something that's not within reach. Don't take a Jewish boy home to Hitler. He's going to kill him and kill you, shaita. That's called a shaita. But Batya was shtus, the kedusha. You remember? Holy insanity. So you extend your arm, and then there's an invisible arm of Hashem that extends it beyond your reach, and she saves Moshe. Every time you see these stories in Medrash or in Gemara, they're not just, let's put in another story so the kids can have a coloring book and paint an arm that's 50 feet with orange or yellow or whatever their imagination tells them. So we have something to do Friday morning. There's a depth here. They're trying to tell you the story that you could miss. Rav is telling you the story. Vashti understood this is a moment of confrontation. She would not let it go. And she punctured, not his ego, his insecurity. If he would have had a healthy ego, he would have been fine. But the imposture, when somebody calls you out on being an imposter, and that's what you were trying to bury your whole life. Who makes a party for 187 days? Let me tell you. Even those of you who spent time in college or university in the 60s or 70s, and you knew how to party. So how long did the party go? Woodstock went for how long? Months, but not 187 days. Okay, almost, right? So they were getting close to that. I don't know if it was Woodstock or Yitzstock, but this guy, what was he doing 187 days? He was trying to become beloved by the people. It's called validation. But the last person he needed to give him validation was not ready to do it. It usually always happens with men. They build careers and build empires, but all they're looking for is one person to give them real validation. And it's very, very difficult. Sometimes she doesn't do it because of her stuff. And sometimes she doesn't do it because of his stuff. And usually she doesn't do it because of both of their stuff together, and they get entangled with each other's traumas. But the bottom line is, inside he's miserable. That's why a lot of marriages don't last, because instead of people identifying their own wounds, they just project their wounds on the other person, and that's it. And it's true, the other person may be suffering and may have their wounds. Nobody's perfect. But when the Baal Shem Tov said, what you see in other people is a mirror, he wasn't just saying this cute little thing, learn and work on yourself. This is one of the most accurate descriptions and profound descriptions in life for people who want to really, really grow and work on themselves and become the person they need to become in life to really fulfill the mission of their soul. It's really always going inward and saying, what just happened inside of me? Vachamasai bar boy. There was something in his unconscious that was so intensely triggered by this, because he understood exactly what Vashti is coming from. She's like, if anything, you come to me, I don't come to you. And if you want to, I should come to you, you come yourself. And you don't send 7 people, Shamashim, Gaboyim. I don't deal with Gaboyim, you come yourself. And this brought home everything that he was struggling with for so many years from the beginning. That's why he's not called Hamelech the first time. So he wants her to be Vashti Hamalka. You became Mamalka after Vashti, and she's like, no. Hamalka Vashti. Respect Achashverosh. Respect. It's interesting, the Gemara says in Maseches Yevamos, and it's a law in Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, the sages said, Shei Adam Oyev es Ishtoi Kegufay umechabda yoiser migufay. Every husband should love his wife like he loves himself, and respect her more than he respects himself. That's a very interesting description. I understand you say love the other person, love your spouse like you love yourself. Be as considerate and as sensitive and as giving and as generous as you would be with yourself, and have that feeling of affection, because it's really part of you. It's two halves of one soul. But when it comes to respect, respect her, more than you respect yourself. Vashti never learned that Gemara, and Achashverosh also didn't, and maybe he didn't deserve it, or whatever the case is, and as a result of this, they have this confrontation. So, Vatemoin HaMalka Vashti, okay? Now comes Pasuk Tesvav. Achashverosh is consulting the people what to do. Now here he has a major problem. On one hand, Vashti just disgraced him in public. On the other hand, he knows if he gets rid of Vashti, what are people going to say? You don't have a right to be a king anymore. You're out. There may be a mass rebellion against him. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard ball. If he eliminates Vashti, he may be eliminating himself and his entire dynasty. If he doesn't eliminate Vashti, he remains the real loser and nerd and Shlamazel and Nebuch case. So he has a serious issue what to do. Okay? So on one hand, he wants to confront the situation, but he wants the advisors to find a way of him climbing down from a tree. He's on a tall tree. You know what they say? Give him an opportunity to climb down. So therefore, when he thinks this is a sly way of dealing with it. Achashverosh says, you know what? I'm going to make a big fuss. We're going to take Vashti to a court. It's going to be a kangaroo court, like Stalin's courts in communist Russia. Okay? So it's going to this won't pass easily, so people see I'm a man, ani gever, as they say in Hebrew, ani chatich, I'm no pushover. You know what chatich is? Okay. I'm no pushover, but on the other hand, I want them to have seichel and realize, don't get rid of Vashti. So when he presents the case to them, he's showing them why they should really exonerate her. So take a look at Pasuk Tesvav. He says, "Kedos ma'alasois ba'malka Vashti." He repeats those words. What to do with the queen Vashti? Asher lo asasas ma'amad hamelech Achashverosh biyad hasarisim. Why does he repeat the whole story here? He could say what she did. She didn't do what I said. Basically, first of all, she was a queen before. Second of all, I sent this message through 7 people. I didn't tell it to her directly. You see, Achashverosh is giving them a way to help him get off the tree and say, you know what? She's a queen. You only sent messengers. Maybe she didn't understand. Whatever it is, get him off the hook. That way, his respect is maintained. It was a court case. This was serious. It wasn't just ignored. And on the other hand, he doesn't kill her and lose his own license and ticket into aristocracy. Comes Memuchan and says, Lo yala melech levadei ofsa Vashti amalka. Memuchan, who's officially the friend, here says, no, she's Vashti amalka. Women have no rights at this time. She's a simple woman named Vashti. You made her a queen. And she's going to set a precedent here. Nobody's going to say, oh, she's Nebuchadnezzar's great-granddaughter. They're going to say a wife rebelled against the husband and the king. You're done. All men in this empire are done. And you will be known in history as the man who created the absolute revolution of feminism, where women need men like fish need bicycles, to quote, I think, Gloria Steinem, or one of them. Women need men like fish need bicycles, one of the most brilliant and stupid things that was said in the history of humanity. You will be the one. You will be. You think Jewish women will create feminism? The Persian monarch is to be the one who generated feminism. Suddenly he says, Vashti Malka. No, she was no Malka. She was a woman. You made her the queen. It's a man's world. It's not a female's world. This is Memuchan, who the Gemara says was also Haman. This is a male world. This is not a female world. She's Vashti Amalka. And then he says again, Hamelech Achashverosh Amar Lahavi is Vashti Amalka. He didn't say to bring a queen. He said to bring Vashti, and she didn't listen. And then he says, what we need is Asher lo yisavei Vashti. Now it's not even a queen. Now once she disobeyed you, she doesn't even have a right to be a queen. Done. Lo yisavei Vashti. She's just a Vashti. Get rid of her. So this order of Vashti Amalka, Malka Vashti is exactly telling the story. Now take a look in the music. Gam Vashti Hamalka. That's a Zakef Katan. Zakef means erect. Katan means small. Achashverosh was basically saying, she was small. I made her. stand tall. Zakef is stand tall. Zoikef kefufim. Zakef katan, I took a little girl, and I turned her into a queen. That's what Achashverosh said. The next pasuk, Yud Aleph, Lahavi es Vashti Hamalka. Darga severe. Darga means a level, a step. Severe means broken. Basically, what he's trying to do is, he is trying to break her stubborn resistance to surrender to her. Darga severe. He's going to take her darga, her level, her stature, and break it. Vashti Hamalko. You can even hear in the music. Vashti, really? Hamalko. Perspective. What does she say? Vatemain Hamalko Vashti. Munach Revi. What's Munach Revi? Munach Revi means I'm the fourth generation of Nebuchadnezzar. Hamalka Vashti. Vashti came after Hamalka. I was a queen before you knew me, before you were born. Afterwards I became Vashti. Munach Revi. I'm the fourth generation laid out from Nebuchadnezzar. But there's also a deeper level. Munach. She doesn't know by these words, Munach Revi, the fourth generation is Munach, is about to be laid down and eliminated, but she doesn't know this yet. Now, Tesvav Kedos Malasois Bamalka Vashti. You hear the tune, the music? Bamalka Vashti, deliberation, patience. The trup is called Bamalka Vashti Tipcha Esnachta. Esnachta from the word menucha. Do this with patience, with savlanut. Tipcha esnachta, tipa of menucha. Don't impulsively rush and kill her. In the olden days, when you disobeyed a king, there was no question. Boom! You went out with a head shorter. There's no question. This is not democracies. The king was absolute. He says, but here, esnachta. Da-da-da-da-dum. Don't be impulsive. Tipcha esnachta menucha. Why? Because he knows he's in a bind. If she gets killed, there could be a rebellion against him. On the other hand, he can't let it go. So, benucha, tipcha vashti. That's called tipcha esnachta. Do it with shikul adas. Huh?
It sounds like it's proper one made for the Megillah, but they're used everywhere. That's so amazing.
Of course, because they're used for these words. They're used for these words. Haman says, no. Lo yal melech levada yavsa. Vashti Amalka. Vashti Amalka. Not tipcha esnachta, munach esnachta. Let go of your esnachta. No deliberation. She is a rebel. She is dangerous. She is a cancer in this society. Munach esnachta. Enough with your deliberation. Not tipcha esnachta, munach esnachta. That's what he wants. Because you said Lavi as Vashti Amalka. Yeah. You needed to break her and she did not. And therefore, Shaloi Savoy Vashti. That's it. We're getting rid of. The last one is Loi Savoy. And you can see, Asher Loi Savoy Vashti. What is that trup? That trup is Kadma, Va'azla, and Revi. Asher is Kadma. Savai is Azla, Vashti is Revi. Asher lo Savai Vashti. Kadma va'azla Revi is basically saying, take the Revi, take the fourth generation of Nebuchadnezzar, and Kadma va'azla, get rid of her. Azla means let her get out of here, let her go away.
We left out one darker sphere, the second darker sphere.
I didn't leave it out because Haman was explaining to Achashverosh the depth of her crime. So to summarize, it starts off Zakev Katan. Achashverosh said, I made a small girl stand so erect. Vashti Amalka Darga Sevir, he tried breaking her elevated self-appreciation and level. Hamalka Vashti is Munach Revi. She's like, I'm the fourth generation of Nebuchadnezzar. I'm not coming to you. But in that process, she was also Munach Revi. She was eliminating the Revi later. Bamalka Vashti Tipcha Esnachta. Do this with a tipa menucha, do it with serenity, don't do it impulsively. Vashti Amalka and Pasuk, the next one, Tazayin, is Munach Esnachta, get rid of your Esnachta, get rid of your serenity, and eliminate her. Vashti Amalka, again, Darga severe, you were trying to break her and she was not broken. And then Asher Loisavai Vashti Kadma Va'azla Revi, let this fourth generation Kadma, get her out of here, Va'azla, let her move away, which means get rid of Vashti. So everything that went on between these two is all intimated in the music and in the order of the psukim, which also explains to us what happens here. Because what happens here is, now we understand, after she is killed, he never dealt with the imposter syndrome. He never dealt with his insecurity. He couldn't. He just eliminated her. They never can have another conversation. She was gone. She was gone. And this is my own thought that came in, and I don't think it's for me. I just want, it's like she's gone. Physically she was gone, but emotionally what she said stayed there. So she wasn't there anymore, but she stayed. It lived in him. And that's why his second queen, he doesn't give her permission to come in without permission. Esther tells Mordechai, if I go in and he doesn't extend his scepter and I walk in without permission, what happens? He kills me. What, you kill your wife for walking in to your chamber without permission, bismashuga? But now you see how paranoid this man is. His paranoia became worse and worse. Bigsan and Seresh tried to assassinate him. He executed them. So now he's living with daily paranoia that everybody wants to kill him. Inside he doesn't feel like a king. On the outside he thinks nobody thinks he's a king. This man is now completely paranoid. That's why Esther knows if she walks in without permission, she is dead too. This man thinks everybody's about to kill him, poison him. Your own queen is going to kill you. He thought he killed his first queen. Maybe his second queen is going to kill him. And this is what this man is now living with. It's why he hires Memuchan Haman to be his closest man, because Haman to Achashverosh is what those who know communist history, what Beria was to Stalin. Stalin was one of the most insecure people in history, and Beria was the head of the Keda, and the brilliance of Esther. Esther understood all of this. And she knew, she took the insecurity of her husband, his imposter syndrome, and used that to save the Jewish people. How? By making him suspicious of the man who was supposed to be his biggest protector. This was her brilliance. When she's inviting Haman and him to two parties, once, Mela, and a second time, there's something going on. Right? And then when Achashverosh goes to the garden, he comes back, and who does he see on a bed? He sees Esther and Haman. This was Esther's genius, the genius of this woman. She took that very insecurity of Achashverosh and used it against him by exposing Haman to be his greatest threat. He's like, OMG, there's nobody I could trust. Haman is going to take my wife from me. She gets rid of Haman. And now Esther could run the show and save the day. So the whole story with Vashti is not just a mistake. It's not just a nice introduction. It gives you the complete understanding of the Esther's brilliant psychology into her husband, Achashverosh, exactly what he was dealing with, so that she could use that very trait to save the world from the darkness.
Did not trust Esther though? Just like when she was set up, I think that she was also part of it.
He wasn't sure. He wasn't sure. He was just very suspicious. It says after the first party, he couldn't sleep. Why not? Doesn't say in the Megillah. The real reason is he thought that somebody is taking his wife. And he started to think Haman and Esther are going to plot together to kill him. Haman will marry Esther and take over the empire. That's what he was thinking. You understand? Of course he didn't sleep that night. Esther was using all of this to create a web to show that Haman is the man. And when Esther tells Achashverosh, there's a man here who wants to destroy my people. The first time she says my people, it's like, ooh, Haman wants to kill Esther. In other words, the last thing that Haman wants to get rid of, he has access to the king completely. Haman is the man, he's the boss, everybody's bowing down to him, the king needs him. But there's one thing standing in his way, the king's wife. He's now trying to kill Esther together with all the Jews, And suddenly his best friend Haman is his greatest enemy. And then when he sees Haman on the same bed with Esther, he says, Lichboish Samalka, Imi Babayis, you're going to conquer the queen, you're done. And his anger again goes crazy, the same level of before, because again, that same insecurity is triggered. And that's when Esther knows, Carpe Diem, seize the day. Charvaina says, I think we should hang this monster. Cheshverosh says, a brilliant, brilliant idea. And now finally he realizes it was Haman who manipulated him all these years, and that's exactly the position Esther needed to start knocking sense into Achashverosh and saying, you were used and used and used by everybody from day one, and I'm actually the best thing that ever happened in your life because I'm a normal, confident, secure, emotionally healthy woman, and I'll actually help you become a sane human being, and you won't have to drink every single night. Now, yeah. Oh, yeah. She put herself at risk, absolutely. She already put herself at risk the first time when she went into him and asked him to make a party. And she told Mordechai, if he doesn't stretch out his scepter, I'm going to die. And that's why she didn't want to do it. Exactly. Exactly. Of course, this was a major, major risk. But the brilliance of her was that she put the whole story together. This doesn't say explicitly in the Megillah because this wasn't said. This was all in Esther's heart. The moment Mordechai said, go in, first she said, I can't. Then he said, without this is the moment. And from now, she takes over. Nobody does anything afterwards. Now, everything is in her, and it's all in her mind, because she's not allowed to tell this to anybody. And when she invites her husband to the party with her and Haman, right, she says something incredible. She says, Yavai, I just want to, is there a blue, could you give me a blue chumash in the back over there? Huh? Yeah, I just want to point something out very, very interesting. Oh, he says, oh, thank you. Oh, gewaldig. Wow. The Gemara says that when she invited her husband and Haman to the party, the Jewish people found out about it, and they knew Esther was Jewish. Remember, he didn't know, but they knew. And they thought to themselves, what a disgraceful Jewish woman. She makes a party, and she invites her husband, and Goebbels, and Himmler, and Eichmann to the party. Even if you want to go out with your husband, you have no choice. What are you inviting Haman? This is what a Jewish woman does. So Esther became the disgrace of the Jewish people. Nobody could have imagined what this woman was concocting in her mind. So she was like, people were like, they were so disappointed, like how much did she sell her soul? Like fine, you went to the palace, but you sold your soul so badly. But I want to show you something fascinating, and that is, when Esther comes into the king, and she says to the king, right away she comes in, and he says, what do you want? And she said, Yavai hamelech v'haman hayom el hamishta. The king and Haman should come today to a feast that I made, asher asisi loy. Yavai hamelech v'haman hayom el hamishta, asher asisi loy. To the feast that I made for him, for the king. So she's asking the king to come with Haman to a feast. Beautiful. Interesting. The Arizal says, Yavai hamelech v'haman hayom is Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Where does Yud Kei Vav Kei come in here? Like you can't get further from God's name. She's inviting one drunk and another anti-Semite and both anti-Semites to a party. Great. Yud Kei Yavai HaMelech V'Haman Hayom. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Interesting. So the king says, okay, let's do it. He told her he'll do whatever she wants. Ad Chatzia Malchus. Now, if you were Achashverosh, I just want you to think. Your queen just came in. It was an intimate moment. You say, what do you want, Esther? What do you want? Tennis bracelet? No. No. Okay. You want to go to Cozumel for 3 weeks? No. You want You want to go on a private, what do you want? And she says, I want you to come to a party with Haman. It's very weird. Why with Haman? If you told your husband, you want to have a moment with your husband, you're going out, you're making a whole mishnah, it's for him. This already triggers him crazy. Now they're at the party. He's drunk, of course, a lot of wine. He's always drunk. That's what, insecure people need, numbers, whatever it is. Either you drink or you're a binger or you're on your phone, or you're doing something. And what happens at the party, he says, what do you want? And everybody says, why didn't she just tell him at this point what's going on? She waited for a second party.
Why didn't you say the first?
Very good, because he was not yet insecure enough. She needed to build up. She was a brilliant, brilliant person, Esther. She understood everybody here in a most profound way. People just think she had courage. She wasn't courage. She was a gon hagoinim. She got it all. She understood what happened with Vashti. She got the whole story with Vashti is just the introduction to understand Esther. To understand what Achashverosh was suffering from. So she knew at this point his paranoia is big, but it's not big enough to change history. We need to get him over the top. We need to get him to the same breaking point that caused him to kill his first wife. That's what we need. To a point where he loses it, where he's facing his abyss without knowing it because he never dealt with himself. So now she says, come to a second party. Now, when she says come to the second party, and here you see, and it's really incredible. The first time she says, Yavai hamelech v'haman hayoim el hamishte asher asisi loy. Let the king and Haman come to the feast that I made for him. For who? For the king. The second time she says, Yavai hamelech v'haman el hamishte asher esa lohem. Come to the party that I'm making for both of you. Whoa. The first time at least she said it was for me. Now it's for both. It's for everybody. It's for me and him. What do you think now he was thinking? He's like, this does not smell good. So it could be, maybe, what's happening is Haman and her are plotting to kill me and get married. Maybe she just really, really likes him. And there's a secret thing going on. Maybe there's something else I don't know. But one second, Haman is the one who was always warning me that everybody wants to kill me. If he's in love with Esther, and he has to get rid of me, so that means my greatest nemesis, my greatest threat is the man who's my closest confidant, who's betraying me in the most intimate way with my wife. Just the betrayal is enough. Never mind the plot to kill. That's why the night before what happens? Haman goes home. He's not sleeping. Of course he's not sleeping. People say, why is he not sleeping? Because no man sleeps when this is happening. He doesn't know what his wife is up to. He doesn't know what his confidant is up to. He is completely panicking and anxious. Okay, now they read from the book that Mordechai saved his life from Bixen Viseresh. Haman comes in asking to execute Mordechai. Achashverosh is not feeling so good about Haman these past few days. So he's like really, really not excited about Haman. And he tells Haman, go lead Mordechai around the streets on the horse. People just think it was just a moment of grace. No, he had issues with Haman right now. Haman comes home from Mordechai and he's being rushed to the party. Esther comes into the party. She gets her husband drunk again. And she can smell that things are working out. He does not like Haman. He does not like Haman. Now when Achashverosh says to her, Malach Esther Amalka, what do you want? Now, all the pieces were set up. She says, I have a problem. The problem is there's somebody who decided to murder me. There's somebody who decided to murder me and kill all my people. So he says, who? Who? Who is the man who wants you dead? Who? And she points, Haman. This was the moment. After everything he has been suspecting, Haman is the one who wants to get rid of Esther. So this whole relationship that Haman has with Esther, and Esther has with Haman, it's not Esther's fault. Haman actually wants to murder Esther. He wants, there should be no buffer zone between him and the king. He is the only man. By the way, Stalin killed his own wife. She officially died in bed. And that's when Beria had complete access to Stalin because there was nobody there. That's just a modern day version of this. So you can get rid of Esther, you're good. Now there's nobody left that can even begin to get close to the king without you. This is what Esther needed. Haman is frightened. The king is furious. But come b'chamasai, that same anger that he had with Vashti, the same chamasai, the same word, it was triggered again. This lowlife, in my own circle, the most powerful man, I gave him all of his power, and now it's all used against me to kill my queen. And Achashverosh was in awe of Esther. He loved Esther. He was completely enthralled by her, the Megillah says. This is all part of it. He goes to the garden to relax. Haman goes to Esther to start pleading for his life. The king comes back from the garden, and Haman is on the bed where Esther is because he's pleading with her. And the king says, Lichboish es hamalka imi babayis. You're going to conquer the queen with me in the house. And Haman realizes this is really not good. And that's when Charvaina says, why don't we hang him on the gallows? There's a tree that he prepared for Mordechai. Mordechai is the man who saved you from Bixen and Seresh. He now wants to execute Mordechai. So who's your friend? Who's your enemy? He wants to get rid of the people who tried saving you. He wants to get rid of Esther. Achashverosh is like, wow. At this moment, he gets rid of Haman. V'chamas hamelech shachacha. Once again, his anger is relieved. That same story that happened again, Esther repeats. But this time, she's not the victim. Hitler is the victim. Haman Harash is the victim. And this was all in Esther's mind. And that's how she did it. And that's why you see, the first time it says, Yavai HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim, is Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Right? We said Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because as she's doing this, she has one intention. And that is, Ein Hashem Shalom v'Ein HaKisei Shalom Achi Yimach Shmai Shel HaMolek. Hashem's name is incomplete till Amalek's name is not erased. Yud Kei Vav Kei is now going to be complete when the king and Haman come today to the party. Yavai HaMelech. Of course it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. Everybody thinks she's selling her soul to the devil. She's not selling her soul to the devil. She's making sure that God's truth and reality will remain eternal because Amalek and Haman in that generation is going to be eliminated. Now it's interesting, the second time she says to come, the second time when she asks, she says, Yavai HaMelech v'Haman El Hamishta Sher Eselahem. The first time it's Yavai HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim. Yavai HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim. So that's Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yavai HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim. The second time it's Yavai HaMelech v'Haman El Hamishta. So it's Yud Kei Vav El Hamishta. Between the last Hey and the Yud Hey Vav, there's a separation. She separates God's name the second time. What happened? Yavai HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim is Yud Kei Vav Kei. The second time it's Yavai HaMelech v'Haman El Hamishta. She separated the last Hey. The Zohar says, woe unto the person who gets in between the lion and the lioness. When the lion and the lioness are together, if you get in between them, I feel bad for you. All Esther was trying to do is, she wanted to make Achashverosh feel that Haman came in between the lion and the lioness. He was the one creating this gulf in the marriage, the separateness in the marriage. Either by killing Esther or by killing Achashverosh, but he is destroying this marriage. Spiritually, there's Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. Yud and Hey Vav are the masculine energy. Hey is the Shechina, Malchus, that's feminine. So the second time there's a separation between Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Basically, Amalek Haman is coming in between the relationship of Hashem and the Jewish people. That's the second time. Yavai HaMelech v'Haman El Hamishta. The last hey is being torn away from Yud, Hey, and Vav, the first letters. Spiritually and physically, they're paralleling each other. And that's when Achashverosh goes crazy. Because everything in the Megillah is also a metaphor on a spiritual level. So now, we can appreciate why it's called Megillas Esther. We would think the name should be Megillas Esther or Mordechai, Megillas Mordechai Esther. I mean, Mordechai played a major role, but the name is Megillas Esther, only Esther. Because the real story happened in such a deep place in Esther's heart that nobody knew about it. Even Mordechai couldn't suspect any of this. She couldn't share this with a soul. This was only Esther, who knew Achashverosh better than anybody, who knew Haman better than anybody, who understood what happened with Vashti better than anybody. She is the one who in her mind and heart can bring all of this together and use the very insecurity and craziness and fear and imposter syndrome of her husband, and instead of becoming a victim of it, she used that itself in order to transform. That's why it's all v'napaychu. It's not just v'napaychu that the decree was transformed. A whole Purim is a transformation. It's deeper. She took the very imposter syndrome quality of her husband, his addiction, his fear, the insecurity he was running away from, and that itself became the liberating experience. That itself, v'napaychu. Yavei HaMelech v'Haman Hayoim is chapter 5, Perek Hey, Pasuk Dalet, chapter 5, verse 6. And the second one is a few psukim later, the same chapter, chapter 5, Perek Hey, Pasuk Ches, Yavei HaMelech v'Haman El HaMishte Asher Esa Lahem. And when she went from you to them, the party that I made for you to the party that I made to both of you, this was bad news. So he looks at one word in the Megillah, nobody would even notice the difference. But that difference, Achashverosh, who is so paranoid people pick up everything. You know that. Somebody once said, just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean the whole world is not chasing me. So paranoid people, you know when you're in the middle of the night walking and a leaf shakes and you're terrified, you hear every sound, you hear every rustle, you hear everything. Achashverosh was so paranoid when Vashti changed the word, the party for you to the party for both of you, he went crazy. Because that's the way you speak to a king. Also the first time she said loy. She didn't say to you, lecha, she said to him. Because that's how you speak to a king in third person. So the first time she said, Hamishta asher asisi loy, like your honor. The party I made for him, which is you, your honor. And the second time, lahem, for them. But it wasn't anymore for him, it was for them. Meaning Haman is an equal partner. Suddenly she elevated Haman to the highest place, and from there he can fall. And here in conclusion, yeah?
It's interesting that verse 6 is you, that's one. If you multiply it by three people, that's verse 18. Verse 6 is one.
The first one was Pasuk Daled, not 6. Perek Hey, Pasuk Daled is the first one. The second one is Perek Hey, Pasuk Ches. And that explains why she didn't do this at the first party. Only when Haman is brought up to the highest level and he's now an equal with Achashverosh does he fall. As long as Haman is seen as a bodyguard, as my confidant, as my advisor, as my protector, I love him. That's why the king has everybody bowing down to him. Why does he want everybody to bow down to Haman? Because if Haman is the biggest guy, then he is secure. Because Haman is the guy who killed Vashti. He's protecting him from everybody that wants to assassinate him. He's feeding into Achashverosh's insecurity. Haman is a smart guy. And he knows how insecure the king is, and therefore every day he's selling him stories. What do these people do? They cut off the king from the masses, so they don't have access. So he's telling him everyday stories. This one wants to kill you, I got rid of him. This one wants to kill you, I got rid of him. Everybody wants to kill you, but I'm here, don't worry, we're protected. He builds up Achashverosh, makes him completely crazy and insane. And he is the man who's responsible for everything. Everybody's bowing down to him. That's beautiful. What Esther does is she understands she has to bring Haman even higher, to the point that Achashverosh should feel that Haman sees himself as an equal. And then he loses the plot. And here, the spiritual masters, the Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Baal Tanya, writes in a discourse that this whole thing is also expressing a deep spiritual truth. And this is what we'll finish with this, another 3 minutes, and bring it Be'ezrat Hashem full circle. What do we see from this whole story in terms of us? First of all, it gives you a certain respect and appreciation for Esther. That's number one. But it tells us something else. When people are not ready to face their own stuff, it creates disasters and more disasters. What happens with Vashti and Achashverosh is a classic scene of a conflict in a marriage, where instead of looking inward and seeing where I have been wounded and what I'm carrying, I feel that by eliminating the external opposition, I will be fine. Vashti never disappears from Achashverosh's consciousness, because what she triggered, he never ever healed from. Haman became now the new Vashti in the sense that he used himself to protect him, but really became his competitor like Vashti was. When people avoid facing the stuff that we run away from our entire life, and it makes sense we run away from it. What is the ultimate healing for the imposter? The healing for the imposter is not to drink more. It's not to get another job. It's not to get more compliments. It's actually to face it, to look at it. What does it actually look like? It's to go down that cliff. It's to go into that abyss that I am so afraid of. And facing it. Because that's when the truth comes out, and that's when your true strength comes out. You see, whenever my strength exists only because I avoid my weakness, my strength is as strong as my power of avoidance. Did you hear what I just said? Whenever your strength comes from avoiding and repressing your weakness, your strength is only as powerful as your power of avoidance, which means deep down you know how weak you are. Only when I can face that weakness, I'll have a real strength that emerges from my true core and not from my forged core, which was simply ignoring and avoiding reality. And as a result of that, Achashverosh's entire identity is so bruised. Now take a look at Haman. When Haman is brought higher and higher and higher to the point that he and Achashverosh become equal, that's exactly when he falls. What does this mean? It means when you take evil and you actually bring it up and you look at it in the face and you think, no, I can't do that. That's exactly when Haman loses everything. The power of all evil and lies is the darkness. It's the fact that it lives in hidden places. Demons love closets. Ghosts love darkness. What do they call it? Skeletons in the closet. When you open the closet door and you look at it, my whole life I spent energy to leave the closet door closed. Don't open it. Open it. Because when Haman is brought up, he won't. Whoops. Well, wow, very good timing. When Haman is brought up, and that buzz is overwhelming, it's over. It's over. Have a beautiful week. Thank you. That was a great horror movie, right? And you wake up. Yes. When to say it. She waited.
I need the bottle.
Okay, we'll have to get to it. We'll see.
The 613 Hashem's name.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Wow. Amazing.
I have a message for you, and I have this book. This is a gift from Raquel Gresham.
Oh, wow.
Was here last week. She said her whole journey, the reason she wrote the book was from listening to you. She wrote you a note inside, a letter.
Okay, wow, thank you.
Now 1 second, and this is something you have to watch.
We have participants from Bnei Brak today.
Bruchim abayim.
American who landed in Bnei Brak and actually stayed.
Wow.
She married an Israeli.
Okay, welcome.
And she's honoring us. This is my granddaughter.
תודה רבה. יפה, אוקיי. אוקיי, אני מודה לכם. תודה רבה. Thank you. Oh, wow. Sounds very good. Okay, wow. Amazing. Welcome. Wow, welcome Antwerp. Welcome Bnei Brak. Wow. Welcome Bnei Brak too.
Bnei Brak, Antwerp, every place.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear. She spoke.
Even though I've been trying to catch you since then, you've been very, very busy. But I listen to your class every single week, and everything that you say resonates with me.
Oh, somebody's calling you.
Should I send you?
You could send it to me or send it to my wife. Yeah.
Can you just send something also? A poem that somebody wrote on your Torah that said they can
Please, yeah.
a woman, a hard person who wrote the whole thing in poem form.
You were there on Sunday?
Yes, of course.
Oh, okay.
I wrote this.
So you'll send it to me.
But I don't have your WhatsApp.
You sent me something, no?
I sent it through Miriam Ply. She want to give me your WhatsApp.
She's protecting you.
No, better email. Could you just send it by email? Just easier for me.
It's the whole offer you said.
Okay, excellent.
Can you just give her a small?
Yeah, just give me a second. Let me just shut 1 second.